In today's episode, local leaders who are deemed as moving too slowly in the extermination of Tutsis are replaced by leaders with the mandate to speed up the killings. On the same day, nurses and hospital staff at Sehashka Hospital, alongside soldiers, take part in killing Tutsi patients, Sehashka staff and others who are taken refuge at the hospital. April 17th, 1994. Massacres perpetrated against the Tutsi in the former Kigali city, Kigali-Ngari, Gikongoro, and Cyangugu prefecture. The genocidal government appointed new prefects to speed up the genocidal plan in all prefectures. On April 17th, 1994, the genocidal government held a meeting in which some prefects were replaced by others considered as serial murderers who would speed up the implementation of the genocide in their respective prefectures. This is the reason why Jean-Baptiste Habyarimana, the former Butare prefect, and Godefroid Ruzindana of Kibungo were substituted and were later wiped out together with their families. New extremist prefects from Hutu power were installed. Those included François Karera from Kigali-Ngari, Sylvain Sabimana from Butare, Anaclet Rudakubana from Kibungo, Eli Nyirimbibi from Byumba, Basile Nsabumugisha from Ruhengeri, and Charles Zirimwabagabo from Gisenyi. François Karera was convicted of genocide crimes by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda and was sentenced for life imprisonment, while Sylvain Sabimana was sentenced to 18 years of imprisonment, and Dr. Charles Zirimwabagabo was tried by Gacaca courts and sentenced for life imprisonment. Others are on a run and under international arrest warrants. Massacres of Tutsis at Muhima mass grave near Rujeje Cell, CND, and at Kigali sector, Kitabi Center. Many Tutsis were killed at the mass graves in Muhima near Rujeje Cell. This mass grave was nicknamed CND in reference to the CND which accommodated the RPA soldiers. The Tutsis killed there were from Kimihurura, Chimichanga, and those around Muhima who had not fled to Sainte Famille Church and Saint Paul Center. In addition, bodies of those killed at Centre Pastoral Saint Paul and Joc, Jeunesse Ouvrière Catholique, was also taken to Muhima mass graves. Between April 15th and 17th, 1994, Rubaiza Hassan and Chibuye Karungu had established a roadblock in Kitabi Center near Mont Kigali and military camp. They killed many Tutsis there who were coming from Ngendo, Kigali, Kabusunzu, the Upper Nyamirambo area, as well as those from Kitabi, and they were thrown in the mining pits nearby. Interahamwe were supported by the army to kill all Tutsis. Massacres of Tutsis at home of Calcutta Sisters below the Sainte Famille Catholic Church. A number of Tutsis had taken refuge at the home of the Calcutta Sisters, located below Sainte Famille Catholic Church. Interahamwe brought them towards the so-called CND mass graves at Muhima, whereas women and children were killed at the Calcuttas. These Interahamwe attacks were headed by Nyirabagenzi Odette, councillor of Rugenje sector, and Angeline Mukandutie, the inspector of Nyarugenge schools. And the latter also supplied guns to Interahamwe, and her home was called Etat Major. After the genocide, Angeline Mukandutie went to exile to Zaire, current-day Democratic Republic of Congo, and came back towards the end of 2019 and was handed over to Mageragere prison to serve Gacaca's sentence of life imprisonment that was assigned to her in absentia. All the Tutsi corpses thrown in CND mass grave at Muhima were later exhumed and buried in dignity at the Kigali Genocide Memorial in Gisozi. Among the Interahamwe leaders included Nyeshimana aka Gikongoro, Gatari Fidel, Bugondo, Rwagatare Faustin, who forced Tutsis to march to the mass graves. Massacres of Tutsis at Sehashka Hospital. On April 17, 1994, many Tutsis, including patients, those who cared for patients, and those who had taken refuge at Sehashka, were massacred there. Most of the hospital staff were characterized by genocidal ideology and hate. Towards the end of 1993, some medical doctors were supplied with guns, allegedly for their own protection. Dr. Faustin, the former director of the hospital, allowed armed soldiers to camp inside the hospital, saying that it is for the security purposes. In April 1994, the soldiers led by Ndagijimana Frederic, also called Kamashini, started the census of Tutsis to avoid killing Hutus by mistake. Interahamwe were camping near the hospital, waiting to kill all Tutsis thrown out by the doctors. Nteziryayo Benoit, Edith Mukakabera, the nurse and maternity supervisor, worked with the soldiers, Kamashini Pierre to check patients' ethnic group through their ID during the night. After checking, Hutu were given their IDs back, and for the Tutsis, their IDs were kept by the nurse, Edith, and discharged them immediately on grounds that no disease was found. They were killed by Interahamwe on the spot. Many of them were killed on April 17, 1994. Doctors, nurses, and hospital staff who took part in killings at CHUK Hospital were Dr. Ntezayabo Benoit, who was sentenced by Nyarugenge Gacaca Court in absentia for 30 years imprisonment. Dr. Habyarimana Theonest, who was sentenced by Rugenge Gacaca Court in absentia for special life imprisonment after being convicted of genocide crimes, including raping and killing Marie-Jeanne Mukarango and killing Murwanashyaka Antoine on May 12, 1994, and establishing roadblocks to kill Tutsis. Dr. Auguste Chimana carried out genocide at CHUK and continued in Hongwe, where he helped Martin Damaje, the burgomaster of Mugina. After the genocide, he fled to Zambia and he's a leader of FDLR in Zambia. He first worked in Lusaka Hospital. Additionally, Dr. Ernest Muvunandinda, Dr. Laurent Ruboneza, and Dr. Bouvenje Gérard also participated in the genocide. Among the nurses who participated in the genocide include Ndayambaje Stephanie from Gihinga, Rutsiro district. She was a nurse and the chief of staff at CHUK. She took part in the killings of her Tutsi colleagues at CHUK as well as teachers of Lycée Notre-Dame de Citeaux. She collaborated with soldiers at the entrance by giving them a list of Tutsis to be killed. She was convicted by Gacaca with the following crimes: preparation of Tutsi lists, torturing Tutsis, participating in attacks to kill Tutsis in CHUK, and causing the killings of a lady who was left in CHUK by the sisters. On June 21, 2008, Chiyovu Gacaca Court convicted her with a sentence of 30 years. Bananeza Marie-José from Buringa Commune, former Gitarama, facilitated the death of many Tutsi patients, CHUK staff, and those who had taken refuge at CHUK. Edith Mukakabira, Philemon Mukandamaje from Byumba, and Marie-José Bananeza were in charge of checking patients and preparing a list of Tutsis which they handed over to the soldiers led by Kamashini, the serial killer. Josephine Mukaruhungo from Chibirira exterminated many Tutsis, including a teacher called Edith and her children, as well as the children of Kamatari in Chivugiza. She participated in the genocide preparatory meetings held at Gaspard Sengyumva's, the serial killer's place, in Chivugiza. In 1990, she took part in imprisoning her Tutsi colleagues on grounds that they were accomplices of Inkotanyi. In 1994, many Tutsis from Ndera, Rubungo, Jurugwe, Murindi, Gasogi, Kanombe, and Remera took refuge at Karaes Ndera Center, hoping to be safe because it was for religious people. They arrived at the center from April 8th to 10th, 1994, and on April 10th, Interahamwe started to attack them from outside of the fence, but they could not kill many Tutsis because they resisted using their traditional weapons. On April 11th, 1994, Belgian soldiers came to look for Belgian religious brothers and patients as well as their pets. After realizing that all foreigners were gone, Interahamwe continued to attack them and they met resistance. Interahamwe decided to call soldiers from Kanombe military camp on April 17, 1994. When they arrived, the fence was immediately demolished and started throwing grenades while getting them outside. After realizing that many Tutsis were killed, soldiers left and Interahamwe finished them off. They also killed all Tutsis, including patients in the hospital. Approximately 3,500 Tutsis were killed at Karaes Ndera. Some of Habyarimana's higher-ranking soldiers inhabited on the hills of Ndera, and they sensitized citizens to kill Tutsis even before the genocide. Additionally, high authorities like Mbonamheka Stanislas, former Minister of Justice, the Burgomaster of Rubungo Commune, Rurenganganizi Valens, among others, lived in Ndera and took part in the killings of Tutsis who had taken refuge at Petit Séminaire de Ndera. All the killings that took place in the former Munini sous-prefecture, which was composed of Mubuga, Rwamiko, Kivu, and Shiri communes, were masterminded by the former sous-prefet, Damian Viniga. On April 11, 1994, the sous-prefet Viniga and the burgomaster of Mubuga commune, Nyidandi Charles, held a meeting with those who had attended the Monday market in Munini Commercial Center and told them to kill Tutsis and burn their houses. From then, Tutsis were encouraged by the leaders of Chibirizi, Gisizi, and Gasave sectors to seek for refuge at Munini sous-prefecture, where they were told they would be protected. Those who tried to go to Burundi were diverted at sous-prefecture by Chibirizi councillor. Others who fled there were from Rwamiko and Kivu, former communes close to Mubuga. On April 12th, gendarmes were sent in Tutsi households to ascertain that they had all moved to the sous-prefecture. However, those found were not killed, but rather taken at Munini. Arriving there, they lived a miserable life, dying with thirst because all water pipes were cut. The sous-prefet Biniga would come in from time to time, observe them for a while and leave. Some fled to Burundi, and while they were approaching the border, Nshiri Burugumestre Kadoji sent Interahamwe to bring them back. They gathered them at a place called Giti Chirubanza, surrounded them, and killed them with traditional weapons, grenades, and machetes. Between April 16th and 17th, 1994, Hutus who lived in Munini in collaboration with local Interahamwe who participated in the killings of Tutsis in Kibeho and Tyahinda were mobilized and killed Tutsis who had taken refuge at Munini sous-prefecture. The killings at Munini was led by Biniga, sous-prefet, Charles Nyiridandi, the burgomaster of Mubuga commune, the councillor Chibirizi, Ndahayo Athanase, Hidendereza of Gisizi, among others. Rwamatamu was one of the communes in Kibuye which had many Tutsis. On April 7, 1994, Interahamwe attackers started to invade their homes. On April 17, 1994, Interahamwe attacks at Rwamatamu commune killed Tutsis who had taken refuge there. They faced all acts of torture, including killing children in front of their parents, raping women and girls, and then wounding their private parts with long and sharp sticks. The killings was carried out by gendarmes from Gishita and Interahamwe led by Obedur Zindana, who was convicted of genocide crimes by the ICTR and sentenced to 25 years of imprisonment. Bweyeye is surrounded by Nyungwe forest and is close to Burundi. A big number of Tutsis were killed at Adeper Chiabo, Bweyeye. From April 8, 1994, Tutsis were told that they had killed Habyarimana, the father of the nation, and that they must pay for it. That is when they flew to Bweyeye, where they prayed day and night. On April 17, 1994, around 9 a.m., a strong attack came to kill them and left no one. Before they were killed, the leaders of Chiabo cell, Nautazamutoza Philippe, together with Majambere Juvenal, a soldier from Bweyeye who was on an official leave, held a preparatory meeting in a bar to kill them. Next day, Interahamwe from Bweyeye, led by Ahiwahorana Jonas, aka Gisangani, a second-hand clothes seller who had also gone for military courses, cut everyone with a machete. From April 9th to 17th, 1994, between 2,500 and 3,000 Tutsis from Nyamirama, Ruramira, and Nyarusanje in Rwamagana district were brought to the roadblock near the bridge located between Nyamirama sector and Ruramira. At the roadblock, Interahamwe from all above-mentioned sectors were present to identify their Tutsi neighbors. Many Tutsis were also killed in Mnyaga sector, inside Kabazei government-owned forest between April 12th and 13th, 1994. Over 50 Tutsis were brought there and killed under the command of the director of Rweru Primary School, Rusine Jean Bosco. On April 17, 1994, between 300 and 400 Tutsis were killed at Kadua sector using traditional weapons like bows and arrows, machetes, clubs with nails, among other weapons. Thank you for listening to another episode of Kwibuka Podcast. As always, make sure you leave us a review, sharing what you like about the podcast, and share with others who would be interested in listening.